Hey, Black African Power. What's good? What's happening? A well organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Ooh, man, y'all already know what it is, man. It's God Killer in the house, man. And look, man, we got a powerful show today. And look, man, let's just get it cracking, man.
I'm in Rock Squad up, Magi Archers in the building, please believe. Oh shit. If you ain't Sinetta, no time for that interview, dog. I put my shit out for niggas, I don't send it to blogs. Clan killer off the Buddha, not being discreet. One puff, this big pops and projectiles. Between the sheets. Sun run, cold game, bring your cleats. The best flow blow, Eskimo, penguin feet. Don't need no blunt to burn. You run the turf with 10 niggas on the block. That's a punt return. Ayo, Dolomite prototype soldier with the solar light. Saber and he hold it like he hold a mic. Golden ice spenders, sipping on that overpriced poltergeist spirits. Ripping at the open mic, spoke the nice lyrics like Mama moved mean overnight. Golden motorbike holding on some Tron shit. That nice neon kit is on it. The king's libation with exotic liqueur. Queen's vibration like a Sada Shakur. A lot of decor, imported foreign threads, they ain't got at the store. Nubian Kush, black top pottery jaws, 39% THC, the quality pure. Old rappers try to spit, ain't hot as before. It's like I'm 5 flights above, busting shots at the floor. Cats switch up their style when they ain't got it no more, cause they gotta keep their product in stores to feed their kids. See what that weed did? Yeah, yes man, agreeing on everything we said. I smother the mic like it's the love of my life. Don't get sliced and beat with the butt of the knife. Brother polite, I say I'm animalistic, cause I still be in the hood with my hand on my pistol. The Hebrews think I'm cannibalistic, E5 divination, channel the mystic, audio visionary. Let's play poetical Pictionary. Picture me burning down your missionary. Yeah, then I send you religion. That red dot on your head, that's Hindu tradition. Invisible, independent, intrinsic shit. I'll bring it all to an end with indivisible games. Charles Xavier, getting your brain. Mental anguish or manifesting physical pain. Wizard remains to dance in the chemical rain. Breathe slow, then I'm up out of this physical plane. Got military machinery that exercise weaponized greenery. Shine at a jeopardize the scenery, son. Bruh, the beam 10 times your distance. Inclines convention. Stop rising with no trend line resistance. The parabolic breakout. I'm F-16 with the aeronautic fake out. The God killer. The God killer. The God killer. It's the God killer. The God killer. That's who it is. The God killer. The God killer. It's the God killer. The God killer. The God killer. The God killer. It's the God killer. The God killer. The God killer. The God killer. It's the God killer.
Hey, look, check this out. What's good, family, man? Hey, look, welcome to the show. We got a real powerful show today. All right. Clearing the path for African reclamation with the Amaral Squad and the University Kemetic Press. So, look, let me jump right in real fast, right? One of my favorite authors right here. And this will kind of set the tone for what we're doing. Page 132 from Destruction of Black Civilization. Iron was the basis of the technological revolution in warfare. That the Assyrians, the Hittites, the Persians, and other Asiatic nations were equipping their armies with the new types of iron weapons, and that these were devastatingly more effective than the stone and copper weapons had to be well known to the Africans. It was not news, as was mentioned before. They not only knew how to use the iron, but they had long since developed the iron smelting process. The trouble was the highly sensitive royal monopolies. Yeah, y'all know how we do as Africans. No secret was more zealously guarded than the smelting of iron. This meant rigidly limiting production. Here was fear out of matching both reason and the most elementary common sense. This oversensitiveness which inhibited the expansion of iron production, was to contribute mightily to the success of the Syrian armies over them. Properly too may have blurred prosperity too may have blurred the African's vision. Too much success can be dangerous. In this case, so much wealth was piled up from foreign trade, especially the gold, ivory, copper, and the question of iron, if raised, may have dismissed as economically unsound. Whatever the reason were, the fact is that the great iron industry, which had developed in this century, spreading over Africa, could have started centuries before. And this is the basis of what we're going to deal with. At some point in time, African culture had failed them. They did not see the need for iron. So let me introduce first the squad and then my esteemed guest. What's good, Sister Naya? How you doing? I'm a raw squad up.
I'm a Raw Squad Up. Voices of Fire. Thank you so much for that introduction. I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to have a great show. I'm just excited about having University of Kemet Press here. And I just look forward to engaging and just having a meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm. Wuja, Shasu Marty Metanecha. I'm a raw squad up.
Peace to everyone. Peace to the panel. Peace to you, Unc. Peace to the Amara Squad, Sister Naya, Brother Simotep, and our esteemed guests for tonight. This is your brother Wujao Menib Eri Ma'at, and I'm here. I'm gonna chime in. I think it's a very interesting topic that we've gonna discuss tonight. Hope everyone enjoys it, and we're just gonna get in.
Mm-hmm. Brother Sahub Tep, Mocha University. What's good? I'm a raw squad up.
Peace and blessings to everyone on the panel, to our esteemed guests, and of course, all the viewers who are tuning in live and those who are tuning in after the live program. Just want to say salute, and I look forward to this conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Brother Smash Rockwells said, shout out to Comedic Press. He said when he grow up, he want to be just like y'all. What's good, Brother Yava? How you doing, man? Comedic Press on deck. What's good? You got to unmute your mic.
Hotel, brother, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. It's great to be here. I'm excited about the discussion. I'm excited about the discussion. I'm thankful for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the feedback from the people that are viewing.
Hey, look, check this out. My favorite right here in the building, Dr. Dakar, Kilimanjaro. How you doing, brother? How you feeling? What's good?
Hotel Punk, I certainly appreciate you and Asar and Waju and Naya and Yara. And if Sanjetti is on, I certainly appreciate him. I do know that it's good to not only have this discussion, but certainly to be in such esteemed company. So great to see you all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that time again. I know y'all releasing some great books, and that's going to be part of the discussion. And I'm really looking forward to that. So, I'm just trying to figure out like what inspired y'all to get to this point where y'all at with all these books.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, answer that.
It's moments like this. I mean, just being around you all is just a great thing. Waju doing the great work with the Meta Nature and Asar literally all over the place in a scientific way. I just certainly appreciate it. I've been following Naya also. I appreciate that work. And Ankh, you are a maestro at organizing quality information that we've been missing in the community. People are afraid of it, and so they're going to stick with mysticism and myths and all of that, and that's not going to move us forward. So I'm glad that you pushed this element of it forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. How about you, Brother Yara? You know what I'm saying? We have deep conversations on a regular basis. We really be having fun with it, man. So
yep. to do the work, what inspired me to do the work?
Yeah, what inspired you to do this work right here?
It's a looking out. For me, it was a looking out and seeing that we were on the bottom. I'm 47, so I grew up in the 80s. And in the 80s, it was this campaign dealing with the starving African, right? And so as a child, I seen us on the bottom in Detroit where I grew up. I seen us on the bottom. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out how we got this way. And so I wanted answers. So I began to seek out answers. And I've been very fortunate and began to study and began to see and find this the truth. There's certain things we didn't do that other cultures did do, which allowed them to conquer us and take our resources. And since that point, we've been in a downward spiral, trying to keep from spiraling out of control. And so that's what inspired me to do this work. Is to get us back to our on our right path and get us back to where we should be as a people.
Yeah, we intellectual gunfighters, and we appreciate all the bullets that y'all got. Absolutely. So let's. I'll tell you what. Professor, can you like give me a brief synopsis of your new book you got coming out?
All right, peace. Yes. Well, the book that's currently in the works is called Alluja Volume 2. Given the name, of course, there was a Volume 1 that was published in 2013. And so this is going to be the second volume. And in this volume, it is subtitled, African Religion and Philosophy. And we're going to be dealing with a reanalysis of certain major concepts in ancient Egyptian literature, of course, civilization in general, and as far as their culture. And as always, we're using, living traditions and historical accounts across Africa to give it its backdrop. And we'll see how the underlying philosophy gave way to the development of science along the Nile Valley in the modern sense, in as it regards having observations, then thinking of hypotheses, and then testing and experimenting and developing theories. And so this particular path begins in the Nile Valley, and of course, has went through several different developments over time to the way that we know it here in the West. But it all starts from their philosophical conversations, and so that's what we address there. And secondly, the second half of the book will be addressing Dr. Wesley Muhammad in his long-standing debate that we've been having for a good number of years regarding the etymology of the word Allah and its possible relationship to the god Ra in ancient Kemet. And so I'm taking this opportunity to address a book that he wrote, Ra is Allah, Why Asar and Hotep is Wrong. So, given the nature of his text, it became apparent that I would have to do the work for him. And the work that I did in the text helps to bring about and illuminate and even correct even some assumptions that I had in the first volume regarding that question and the relationship between Semitic and the continental African languages. And so it is going to be a pretty large volume, but it will address, many things and correct many things and bring new types of hypotheses forward regarding some of the ideas that we take for granted that, we may have to reconsider given the evidence as the work, would imply. So I hope I,
Yeah. Okay.
explain that well.
All right. Okay. So before we get back to Yara's, him talking about the books they produced, let me introduce my esteemed uh, colleague. He's also a practitioner. One of my best friends, brother Sanjetti. What's good? I'm a raw squad up.
All right. All right, can everybody hear me? I want to make sure the volume's up.
Yep,
Sounds
loud,
good.
loud and
Okay.
clear, and everything's good.
Okay. All right. Great. Excellent. All right. So first and foremost, I'd like to welcome the guests from University of Kemet Press, Taka Kilimanjaro, and Yara and Neb, um, who all of which I have personal relationships with, and I consider these some of my teachers and counselors, if you will. I want to give praise and honor to the rest of the people on the squad, Brother Uncle Kek, Naya, Sar Imhotep, and other squad members who could not make it, at least at this point. In short, currently teaching metal nature, to an excellent group of dedicated brothers and sisters and elders. So that's going very well. I learned a lot myself. To the research of the University of Kemet Press, I use their books and their works very, very closely. This one is actually one of my favorites here. My Guided Principles of More Living, very well organized, as well as their other works, that I use in my own studies and how I apply the knowledge. So there's some of my work currently. I do have some other community-based projects, but definitely, University of Kemet Press's work is a contribution to that.
Okay. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Okay, Yara, man, do me a favor, man. Go ahead and provide us a brief synopsis on your books and the titles for us, man. So the listening audience can kind of really get a feel for that arsenal y'all have produced.
Look, I can't be brief, so I'm gonna take 30 minutes to do this.
Hey, man. Yeah. MC on lungs too.
So hey, look, we have 16 books on the table currently.
Mm-hmm.
2 books in the pike. So we have 16 books, and so no other organization, nobody else has produced this volume of work. And we're not talking about pamphlets, 50 pages, 100 pages. The first book that we have on the table, the first book that we produce is my Guiding Principles. Go ahead, Sanjay. Guiding Principles of Moral Living. This book is 596 numbered pages, right? 596 pages. And we're talking about 10 point, 12 point font, right? And so we're not using 30 point font to generate this. This book deals with the African morality before we were invaded. And so it takes you to our ancient texts, right? Morality comes out of a people's lived history, right? Out of our experience. So the morality of the enslaved is not the same morality that the enslaver has. So morality is relative to your position. And so we lay out the history of our people in the preface and prologue of the book, the first 170-something pages. Then we go into our ancient writings, and then we go into what our people thought philosophically. Then we go into updating that information and applying that information. That's our first text. So we deal with the morality before we deal with anything else. And then after that, we have the text, African time, right? So we have African time. This here is 1,014 pages, right? 1,014 pages of text, charts, diagram, colored pictures, right? 1,014 pages, and it deals with the universe to 1896. Because one of the first things that I learned from Dakar in about 1990 was that 89 or 90 is that all things are born, grow, develop, and die, and they're reborn at a higher level. All things are born, grow, develop, mature, and die, and they're reborn at a higher level. You can say that for a star system. You can say that for a star itself. You can say that for a moon. You can say that for a planet. You can say that for a species on the planet. And so you can say that for cultures on the planet. Our culture was born, matured, developed, died, and now we're in the beginning stages of the reclamation to lead to the rebirth period. That's African time, right? The third book is Bach. You see that? The third book is Bach. What's the title? Bach Squared, United States Birth, Development, Decline, Regression Before the Leap and Passing, 1607 to the present. This baby here is 1,048 pages, right? Again, we're not talking about pamphlets. Right? We're not talking about pamphlets. We're talking about 1,048 pages documenting the history of the United States from 1607 to the present. My favorite part of this book is the last section, chapters 37, if I'm not mistaken, 37 to the end, where Dekai and Ife discuss computer automated machine production. I've seen nobody else discuss that in relation to African people. Computer automated machine production. What is computer automated machine production? What do you do when the machine is producing the product that's being sold on the market and the workers out of work because the machine has taken the job? What does that mean for Black people, African people who are in the service industry, in the manufacturing industry in this country? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for us in this country? And what does that mean for us as we develop new nations? How do we use the technology to our advantage? That's the beauty of Bach Squared for me. And again, it's Bach Squared, not Bach 2. It's an equation, right? The fourth book in the sequence, the fourth book is Seba. This book here is Seba, A Researcher's First Manual. This goes through approximately 11 to 12 different research methods, right? How to do proper research. Me quoting Unc is not a research method. Me copying and pasting what Rujal writes is not a research method. Me appealing to authorities or scholars is not a research method. There's a proper way to do research that most of our people are missing. Therefore, they don't even know how to get the information that they say they seek to better themselves, which will skew the whole result. You're sitting there with information and you've not done the proper research. Get it? The information itself is wrong in your hand. You follow me? And so that's Seba. The other book that I don't have in front of me is Research.
I got it right here, brother.
What is that? Research, How to Plan, Organize, and Carry Out Research. That book is a book of charts and graphs, which is a companion book to Seba, A Research First Manual. So that's book 4 and 5. Books 1 through 4, you can put it down. Books 1 through 4 are fundamental texts to the rest of the sequence. Books 1 through 4, my African Time, Bach Square, and Seba are the cornerstones for everything else. We deal with your heart with my eye. We deal with your head with African Time and Bach Square, and we deal with your hands with Seba. So before you teach a person what to do, you have to evaluate their morality. You have to evaluate their character. If I teach a degenerate how to split an atom, he's going to create a bomb. If I teach a righteous person how to split an atom, they're more than likely to use that to find ways to create energy to help people out. So morality and character comes before intellect. The fifth, sixth book from there, from Seba, we have what? We have study teams. Well, we have Bach Squared, the study guide, right? It's the study guide to Bach Squared, because the book is so packed full of information and concept that you need a study guide to go with it, right? So a study guide was produced to help the reader understand better what they're reading. And then you have the book Study Teams. So is that clear through there?
Yeah, we can see that.
Study teams. So after you have read these 6 books, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 uncasts. After you read those 6 books, you're sitting there by yourself and say, I now have an understanding. Let me get somebody else so we can get on the same page. And so you formulate study teams, right? Build research and publishing teaching teams. And so now you have 5 to 7 people studying as a team towards a purpose and not a book club, right? So it's an organized way to study information towards a goal. From there, you have survival organizations. Now that we done studied this thing, right, we have an understanding of what's going on. What do we do about it? Well, you begin the survival mechanism, because now that you study, you have a greater understanding of your culture. You begin to pull away from the culture that's dominating you and begin to build the culture that will uplift you. And you do that from a basis of survival, not from the basis of how to get rich, right? And so things like co-opting, right? Things like rehabbing older homes. So there's no need to pay $200,000 for a house. You can pay $100,000 for a house, put $20,000 in it, and you have an excellent home. The thing, community farms and things of that nature are discussed in survival organizations, right? How to remove yourself from the system that you're in to a system of sustenance, and then move away from this system totally in survival organizations. That's this book. So we're on book 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we're on book number 9. We had 2 copies of survival. Then after you do that, how do you replicate that, right? To replicate that, that's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing. K through 12 education. So in K through 12 education, you set up the teaching institution, the school. K through 12 education, would y'all throw up the whole screen with all the books?
Yep, you got
K
you.
12 education deals with how to set up a Saturday school, how to set up an after school program, how to set up a charter school, how to set up a private school, how to set up how to function within the public school system. That's K through 12 education. So there are methods and processes that have been, I don't know if refined is the right word, but that have been mastered by Dekai and Ife, who are actually in those systems. They ran school, junior college, set up a junior college, right? And how to function within the university. That's our next step, how to create a university. We're in the process of creating a university. It takes time, right? It takes time and resources to create a university worth your people attending. That's K through 12. That's K through 12 education. From there, you have the teaching teams, right? Build it and they will come, yes, but to come to do what, right? And come how? And so the teaching teams is the text that you use to teach the teachers to teach in the university, to teach in the high school, to teach in the after school program. And so the teachers have to be taught how to teach the very information that they've gathered from the other books in the institutions that you have. And so you institutionalize everything you read up to this point so it can be replicated, right? It does no good for me to read these books on my own if I can't replicate it, if I'm just lecturing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just lecturing, going around the country talking to audiences of 10,000, 5,000, 1,000, 50 or 25 people. That is not replication, right? That's not a good organized way to replicate yourself and to move this information forward. It has to be institutionalized. The book itself doesn't institutionalize. The book itself may canonize it, right? But the institution is what allows you to replicate the knowledge base. And so I don't know what number we're on right now. So that was teaching teams. From teaching teams, that moves you to what must be done, right? Mm-hmm. You got the institution, right? We got the institution. The institution's in place. We got the teachers teaching. Everybody's on the same page. We have a united body of people. Let's say we got 40, 45 people, right? Okay. That's on board. The question comes, hey, Pop, after all this black stuff, what am I going to
do? What's next, right?
What's next? So instead of titling what's next, we said, as opposed to a question, is what must be done as a statement, as opposed to a question. As opposed to what should we do? This is what you do. In this text, we're saying what to do with all that information, right? And so this book currently sits at the apex of the other 15, because it's an action text. And saying that leads me to say this. All of our texts are applied texts at their foundation. We're not writing for a quote unquote philosophical means. We're writing to apply the information, right? The information to be used. I jumped and missed 2 other texts.
Take your time, brother.
And so I'm on the time limit, right? And so from African time, you have Outline of Africa's History to the 20th Century, right?
Yeah, that's like the smaller version of it, right?
Well, we say a primer, right? Okay. In Outline, you have names and dates. And right. So if you want to get to something that happened quick, so here we go. On page 198, Railroad by William Steele, the 1873, April 14th, the Slaughterhouse case, Supreme Court voted 5-4 in the narrow reading of the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. On page 76, you have, I can't read the name. On page 77, complete foreign domination, invasion, and destruction of Greco-Roman, Alexander of Macedonia. So it's a more like bullets in the outline. So we call it a primer, right? That's a companion text. This is a companion text for African time. Outline, United States Historical Development 1492 to present. This is a companion text for Box Square. So Box Square has two companion texts. This is the outline of what happened in America, right? In the same format as the other outline text. Then from there, we have the book per Unk, African House. The book per Unk is, at its basis, we're using Amar's book 2000 Seasons as a jump off point. And this is a companion text to Ma'at. So we further explore the moral idea and the moral praxis in per Unk, House of Life, without the historical, so a detailed historical backdrop, and without the wisdom teachings. This is a more personal, more personal exploration, a more internal exploration than Ma'at in itself. So this text is 133 number page, but 132 pages. And so that's the 16 texts. Did I miss anything? Those are the 16 texts, right? Which the poster is something that we were using in about 1990, right? And it's just an affirmations that you can put in your house. Love self, hold it right here. Love self first. First know yourself, love and respect yourself. Then you can know and love and respect others. Number one, right? Number one is first to love yourself. Number 5, Ma'at first. First make your heart perfect, and then you can develop your mind and body, right? Again, to the core principles. We have Africa on the poster presented that way. You can put it down, huh? We have Africa presented that way on the poster is to ask you the question, what is your perspective? How are you seeing the world? Because white people, the white controlling class of this country, the white man, whatever you want to call them, right? The European has us walking around upside down and backwards, right? Walking around upside down and backwards. The way we view the world is the opposite of the way we used to be the world, view the world. The way we move through the world, it's opposite today as the way we used to move through the world. And so that image is there to stoke you to ask the question, why is that Africa presented that way? Africa, as a mass on this planet, does not present itself like that, right? Mm-hmm. It presents itself, if you return the poster, upside down. Africa as a mass presents itself like that on the planet. Our ancestors in ancient Kemet and around the rest of the globe knew North and South as we know North and South today, knew East and West as we know East and West today. And so some people make the error of saying that's the original representation of Africa. That's not the original representation of Africa. Our ancestors knew the geography of the region that they lived in, right? They knew that the Nile River wasn't west of, right? They knew the Somalia was on the west, wasn't west, it was on the east side. You follow me? So
absolutely.
Where we are right now, 2018. I've been waiting 20 years for this text, and I'm standing on my tippy toes. I'm so excited, right? I've been waiting 20 years for this text to come out that the Ka is writing. Ka philosophy, right? Mm-hmm. This man told me about this about 20 years ago. I said, what is this? This is a text that deals with the philosophy of our people, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's dealing with the at one point he said it was whites have it as the dialectics, the unity and struggle of opposites, but they miss the regression before the leap, right? Mm-hmm. And so you always see a contraction before you see an expansion. Okay. And then as I begin to study our people, you see that's natural. You see that's not any of us that have ever witnessed a childbirth, right? Mm-hmm. We see the push, the pull, the push, the pull, the push, the pull, then the birth, right? And so philosophically, Asar was alluding to, our people understood certain things philosophically as we observe nature. I'm stoked for that book to come out. Right?
You and me both.
Stoked for that book. Beg your pardon?
I said you and me both, brother.
Bruh. And then the book before that, The Kai is a statistician and the researcher. And so as you see, about 5 of the texts deal with research, right? Deal with how to get information, how to process that information. And so there's another book coming out. I think it's about 600 to 900 pages, The Art of Research, right? The Art of Research. I can't tell you anything but the titles to those books, right? Because the Kai Ife are writing those books. These are the people that are putting in the work to writing those books. But you have to think 20 years of work, right? 20 years of study to be able to produce a volume to move our people forward.
Now, Yara, I know that you said a lot. I mean, you took us through an entire outline and history of your books. Could you just direct our audience to where we can find those titles, just in case someone wants to jump on and pick up one of those books? Why don't you just give the audience a brief directions on how to get to those books?
Well, John, correct me wrong. It's you go to UKMT Press on Facebook, and that'll take you to our store. You click on any image. You click on Show All, and that'll take you to all of the text except for the newest two. I'm gonna put those up tonight with the blank image, just with the titles, and so people can pre-order the newest texts that are coming out that are due out December 2018. Right.
Okay.
So UKMT Press on Facebook take you to our store. You click on the See More tab, and to show all the text. And then from all the text, you click on one of the texts, and you can purchase the text.
If I may interject,
is in the description of tonight's show.
It's in the description of tonight's show.
Yes.
Let me put it in a little bit of perspective. You have a book that's 1,000 pages, right? The book can easily be 1,500 pages, right? We increased the font to a respectable size, right? We being disrespectful with the font size, right? That book can easily cost $200, right? Easily cost $200. But we didn't price it at that. We priced it at a point where our people could get it that want to move themselves forward, right? None of our books are priced over $50 because we did that intentionally so that any Black person that wants to get these texts can get the text. We have people overseas buying these texts. They're paying $50 for the book and $35 for shipping to get one book. We priced it so our people can move themselves from our current condition to the condition that'll better ourselves. And so that leads me right to the Kai who's on here. These newest texts. Let me get to
No, you won't. No, I'm playing with you. Look, we want to kind of move forward a little bit and get a brother the car. But first of all, I'd be remiss if I did not shout out Yvette Kilimanjaro, Brother Jakar's wife. She's an integral part of what y'all do at Kemet Press, and I met her, a lovely Black woman, very educated and dedicated to African people. So let me give a shout out to that sister. Absolutely. Where you at, Doc?
Hey, sir.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, just listening to you all, and so far, I certainly appreciate what has occurred. I mean, just meeting you all years ago, and certainly meeting most of you all personally, directly, has been one of the most important stages in my life because I have been struggling, trying to find the scientific aspect of our work in the community. I had not seen it for about 20 years. I see mixtures of it. I mean, there are people who pray and do nothing. Then there are people who pray and do a little something, but they do more praying. Then there are people who do a lot and they pray and meditate after they do a lot. And then there are people who may not pray at all, but they do a lot. And I'm in the group of the last two. I'm concerned about works first. And so, I was missing a lot of that for my first, I'm in my late 50s now, but my first 20, 30 years, we had to, deal with people, young people. Yara was one of them, just students, and bring them through a process because most of our older folk were just tied down by Islam, Christianity, Judaism, religions and systems of the people who enslaved us. And so I couldn't get much work done. And I'm talking about in the African-centered movement now. And so very clearly we had to plan our works. And what you see is a culmination of plans that were made 30 years ago. You know, when we were sitting in those graduate school meetings, I know some of you all have been in schools and you know how people are sitting in those meetings and study groups and saying what they're going to do. And then you look 20 years later and they didn't do any of the things that they said they were going to do. Mm. And so I made certain when I was younger that I kept good notes, began the process of keeping journals, and used that journal keeping to get through school and also to organize my ideas over years. And so what has happened is we've studied with a lot of different groups, but I must say, you know, being around Amin Ra Squad has been something that's pushed us forward. I really appreciate Waju's work, written work. I appreciate Asar's written work. Every chance I get, I let people know about that. Sanjetti, I do certainly appreciate your teachings. And I want us to continue to put stuff on paper. It's most important to do that. I was given a few minutes to talk about two projects that literally are the close of our system of ideas. You know, there are 21 books that we planned over the years, and we're on number 18 now. And so these two last books will be the last two large books that are written. I just think that you don't write them overnight. You do the work over years, and then at some point you pull aside the time to pull together the work you put together. That's how it works. Most people think that you're sitting down writing a 900-page book and, you know, in one sitting, and you don't. You do the pieces over years, and you know, and then at some point you get time to pull it together and do the editing and do it that way. So I know Asar knows what I'm talking about. But what has to happen is we had to really build up to a book called The Art of Research. I taught statistics research methods for 20 years, university system, mainly to PhD and master students. And so I could have published my lecture notes years ago, but that's not going to help us because those lecture notes will be on such a level that most people wouldn't understand what's being presented. So it takes time to break down what's presented in the way that Asar does. Asar does a wonderful job of breaking things down in a slow pace. You make a good professor, sir. I'm just going to say that ahead of time. Waju does an excellent job also. But I had to take about 10 years to get my mind right to do The Art of Research. Ife helped with this one, so it's going to be a joint project, close out. This is a book that really sums up about 20 research designs with diagrams. I've actually handed out some of the diagrams to a few of you all, so you pretty much know what we're doing. And they're process diagrams. And so it means in substance, the book ends up being about 900 pages. We're around 1,000 right now, but we're cutting down, trying to condense. So it'll end up being around 900 pages. And it will be out at the end of December, 1st of January. Even though it'll be a copyright date of January, it certainly will come out in December around holiday time. This is one for people who are doing, you know, undergraduate research, master's, PhD, dissertations. You don't have to be in a university to do a dissertation. You can do a major research study and make it your dissertation. This is my dissertation for all the years I've been out of school. This is mine and Ife's. So The Art of Research is a high level but condensed summary of all the work we've done over the 30 years in our classes. So that's one to get. But the more important work, I didn't say that one first because this is the one that literally has kept me alive in a lot of different ways. I lost a close friend of mine last year. Her name was T. Isabor. She had changed it from T. Burr. I didn't even know her until 2 years ago, 2.5. Like Asar, like Ankh, all the others I didn't even know. But just like her, you all are made of something, and that's important to me. Substance, quality. And so she was a great person. I wish more people had known her. But I had been struggling with this book, Ka, Philosophy and Methods, because it's so hard to write. Similar to Ma'at was hard to write the first sections of it because you're trying to condense a lot of information into a few pages, but at the same time maintain some type of clarity about morality and ethics. Well, philosophy is a lot different because you're dealing with a war that's going on right now in our community around science and spirituality, or materialism and idealism. Those are at the foundation, those categories at the foundation of thought. Is the thing material, or is it an ideal? Is the thing matter, or is it spirit? And we're dealing with that right now. And I was telling Auntis some time ago that I'm very happy this is happening because we're actually about 300 or 400 years behind the rest of the world just getting to this. Because the rest of the world, the Europeans went through their Reformation hundreds of years ago, and right behind that they had a Renaissance because they were able and smart enough to separate the two and let them grow, and not let religion stand on top and destroy science. They were smart enough to get that done. So now you can go to Notre Dame University, Catholic school, and they have the highest levels of science being taught in those schools, that university, because they're smart enough to make sure that science is a tool that can be utilized to push forward the human development. So yeah, this philosophy and method of Ka, which is what I'm calling it, Ka square, because we have to put a square by it because we can't say we're using the same thing that Kemet used, 4,000 years ago. We can't say that 4,000 years ago. We're actually advancing it. And so I'm going to read the sections that it has out. It's 42 chapters. Right now it's 996 pages. My goal is to have it down to like 850 by next month. I already have marked off the areas that got to be cut down. And so it's 42 chapters, 996 pages. As I said before, we'll have it down to 850 by the middle of December when it goes to sale. There are 8 parts to it. The first one is dealing with matter and spirituality or spirit. It's dealing also with science and spirit. It's discussing, I think ASAR has been doing an excellent job of teaching about matter. Does spirit exist outside of matter? I mean, it should be simple for a scientist, very, very simple. But most people don't get that. They think that a spirit can exist outside of matter. And so they're calling spirit energy, as if energy could exist outside of matter, or as if energy is not a property of matter. So many people are thoroughly confused about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that ASAR is dealing with it, but I was working on this for about 30 years, trying to find a way to explain it. And now you all are talking about it, and I'm just actually inspired by the discussion you all are having, Waju and Ankh, and just really appreciating ASAR and the way in which you're teaching this. But I have about a major section of that introducing the book. There's a part 1, which is the basis and infrastructure of Kemet's civilization. I go through that one, and it's important to show what they built. You see, what happens with history is you see what they say the Greeks wrote, and we don't have the authentic documents that the Greeks wrote. We have the documents that the Arabs translated and said it with the Greeks writing it. We don't have the Greek writings. most of them. Most of Aristotle's works, we don't have the authentic document that he was supposed to have written 1,000 books. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
But we have the translations, then translated back to English later on. But I do go through a summation of what Kemet built with this math, built with this geometry, built with this writing, the ability to write in a scientific manner, built with this engineering, built with this hydraulic understanding of water and dams, etc. We have summed up what they built. In order to build those things, they had to have an understanding of science. They had to have an understanding of engineering, physics, chemistry, biology. They had an understanding of these things in order to build this. So I go through that process, laying the foundation for the book. That's part one. Part two, I then deal with the ideological reflection of that, meaning in our philosophies, what was called cosmology, philosophy, theory, and methods of thought. I do go through that in a detailed way. These two parts, are based on Cheikh Anta Diop's work, Civilization and Barbarism, and obviously 400 or 500 other summaries of footnotes that come right up in there. And then the ideological reflection, which is the philosophy, the cosmology, method, and theory, that's tied directly to his protege, Obinga, Dr. Obinga. I use his foundational book, African Philosophy, the Pharaonic Period, and 4 or 5 other books that he had produced. I use those as a foundation for that, along with other work. But you then get a feel for what we were able to accomplish, laying the foundation for the study of the unity and struggle of opposites. We're calling an aspect of Ka. We move from that to part 4, which is transmission, meaning how did this information get translated, transferred, and then transmitted into Western civilization, and they're using it. They have it. And then you leave Kemet with not the ability to read and write. You leave them with not the ability to build a boat, a ship. They couldn't even build a paddle boat after the whites finished with them. They were building ocean liners 5,000 years ago, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. You find them inside of the tombs of inside of the pyramids. They were building boats, huge boats, ships. When the Arabs and the whites finished with them, they couldn't even build a paddle boat. This is what had happened. They had lost everything. Engineering. They were the first to build these major stone buildings, skyscrapers. When the Arabs finished with them, they're not even able to build a mud hut. So you see how the cannibalism process took place in Kemet, which was the most advanced civilization in the world at the time for at least 3,000 years. How that shakedown ended up with what we call thought matter being transmitted, translated, transferred to the whites and Arabs. Arabs come into that region with nothing but war abilities, force, ability to invade and destroy. They didn't bring intellect. They had nothing. They had just learned how to write, read and write. They had just learned how to write. And so they end up with people saying that there was a moment for about 900 years that they were leading the world in science and technology. And I'm laughing because where did they get this thought matter from, which was not theirs? Thought matter comes from practice. Mm-hmm. You can't write about building a car that works unless you built one, you see. And once you built it, then you can write the theory of building a car, meaning because you built it, it's summed up practice. Well, when someone comes in and takes information about building that car and have never built it, what they're doing then is transferring something you have proven in practice. It's called literally science. You've proven that you built that car in practice, the science of building a car. Someone takes the written version that you left, translates it, and then starts building cars, and then tells the world that they are the people who started building cars. This is what happened with Greece and Rome and Arabia, etc. This is what we have to explain to people. You know, as scientists, we can explain that to you. We call it transmission, the transmission process, the transfer process. If you come forward to China, you'll think of what is called reverse engineering. That's what they call it in China. China is the smartest country in the world, literally to me, because they were smart enough to see capitalism was in crisis and they could just bring those whites over there, let them work on the coast, let them set up buildings, send their PhD people in as basic workers, learn how to build that building, learn how to build that car, learn how to build that computer, and then take it back to the interior of the country, and then start building that same process with Chinese materials. That's what they did. Well, that's what the Greeks, the Romans, and the Arabs did to us, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. They transmitted our scientific information and transferred it into their translation into their own culture and built. Okay, part 5, critique and sublation of African-centered philosophy. I'm going to sum up the last 30 years of what has happened, why I can say so honestly. I told Asar this, I think I told him this in Messenger, that it's so good to see, because he's claimed to be in the African-centered movement, it's so good to see a young people being the scientific aspect of this movement, because I thought it was lacking. I didn't see anything in there or that claimed that. I know Diop never claimed to be African-centered, but I never saw anything in there that was a scientific pole. I just saw a mixture of everything, just confusing to me. I'm happy that Asar is actually standing out in that way. So I do critique and sublate. Sublate means take the best of something. I do take the best of the African-centered philosophy and move it forward, just as I did with the Greek. Number 6, part 6 deals with Ka philosophy and method, meaning Ka without the square, meaning what Kemet was doing. I sum that up based on what they left, the information that they left about what they were doing, and actually the way their societies were set up to show you the unity and struggle of opposites that they had set up in the very foundations of their society. Even the upper and lower summation about the country being put together by two opposites, upper and lower Kemet, tells you that they really understood this unity and struggle of opposite quite well. And then part 7, so I'm closing out. Part 7, I actually transitioned Ka philosophy into a method, and that means it becomes Ka square method. That's why the book is entitled Ka Square Philosophy and Method, because we transition it from just being a discussion of a philosophy of how to build a car to actually a method of building the car, getting the parts together, knowing which parts fit, knowing how it will work, test running it, all of that. So we end up at Ka Square Method, and that's a whole section about 100 pages. Hopefully I explained that well. It took me 33 years to get here, so I hope that I am able to explain that as well as the time I put into it. Number 8, and final chapter, deals with preparing, as Kemet did, persons who get this kind of information for the work. And Yara brought it up about how important it is to know what a person's morality and ethics is. I mean, what they're made of, what substance they're made of, so that you don't put stuff in their hands that they will destroy people with, or at least destroy our people with. And so the part 8 deals with preparation for Ka scientists and spiritualists, which is probably the most important chapter of the book. I wish I could have started, part of the book, because it's 3 chapters there. I wish I could have started the book with that, but if most of you all read our projects, you know we process oriented, meaning we try to follow our process. Like a baby being born, we don't start the baby at 13 years old and start talking backwards. We start at the conception process, show how that occurs, and then show fetus to embryo all the way up to an infant. We show all of that. And so that's why our books are always lined up in an order that a person can follow it. So if they start debating and arguing, we already have it in this order. So again, in closing, this is the hardest one for me. I had some help. Ife helped me. I actually put in the actually put in acknowledgments, all of you all. I did that 3 weeks ago, even before you called me. I thought about how you all, I mean, Amin Ra Squad, how you all inspired me as young people. You all are at the age when I knew I was tired, meaning in substance in my early 30s, 40s, and I needed to get energy to move forward. This is where I was at, and now you all are just like thoroughbreds running out here, getting this information in place and fighting very hard for positions that we're going to need in this battle. Because again, I brought up the point that we're like 300 to 400 years behind the world. China just got itself together in 1945, but they had to have the Boxer Rebellion in 1908 to figure out that you can't go in there with karate and kick all that with somebody standing there with a gun. So Mao Zedong came up with the saying, revolution comes from the barrel of a gun. And so they had to not only learn how to make guns, before they could make them, they had to take them from the people they were killing. And they had to reverse engineer those guns, make them from scratch, and then later on, be able to take more from the people who were coming, bring in the weapons with them, kill them and take their weapons. And then from there, build from there. We got to get better at learning how to learn from people who have won and using what they have done to win. I'm closing. And getting ourselves in a position where these discussions don't end up being personal. This is what I've not liked about our discussions. Black folk, when you start discussing science and spirit, they can't become personal. You see, other people have gone through this and got it right. The whites got it right. The Asians have gotten it right. We have got to get it right. And so this is what I'm saying about being, in summary, being happy to be around you all at this stage, because I see that young people have learned. You all are learning. I'm in my late 50s. I don't have many more long books to write. Right now, once the books are written, it's called implementation. We have to move from the book to practice in our communities. And this is what I'm seeing unfolding in this period. But thank you all for the time. If there's some questions down the road in the future, I'll answer them. But thank you again.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Naya.
Wow, thank you. That was just awesome. I mean, you just dropped so many jewels. I just wanted to allow for any of our panelists, Hamara Squad, to jump in and ask some questions or, comment on everything that Dakar said. So Asar, Sinjeti, do anybody have any questions at this point, reflecting on what he just said?
Man, I'm just glad it's people in the world to think like me. A lot of times people think I'm just bat crazy out my mind. I don't have no soul. I don't have no spirit. I don't have this. I don't have that. Well, I've learned from the problems of the past. And I always knew that this path I was going to be on was going to make a lot of enemies and disappoint a lot of my friends. So to have you step up, you and Yara in particular, want to meet me and let me come out and talk to you. See the arsenal of books y'all had. You know what I'm saying, was very, very inspiring. And I knew that if all my friends left me, I had something that could back me up no matter what. And so I've been taking this walk, man, and I'm going to keep the walk going because diversity rules today. And, so if we all thought alike, then we'd be in trouble. But I'm going to stick to the food, clothing, and shelter and protection of that. And I'm so glad for SARS work that backs that up. You know what I'm saying? So, I ain't going to take too long on that. But look, I'm going to stay on my path and I appreciate the brothers and sisters that have authored works.
I don't have a question. I do have a comment, and I want to say, Dr. Daka Kilimanjaro, I want to say thank you for everything that you do and contribute, Brother Yahra and your wife Ife, and all that you do. And Brother Yahra, the way you laid out, or the way you all have actually wrote the books and how you laid it out, the chronology of the books, they fit into a system. And like how you said, you start the process from conception to death. Basically, you walk through the process, and the way that you all have written the books is also pushing through a process, and you have to appreciate that. People have to appreciate that, and see, I met you in person, and you're not a small person, you know. And so your size matches your mental size. I know that you have done professor work with schools and everything. And when I met you, it matches the work that you've done. Your persona and how you are in person as a person. I want to make that comment. So it was a pleasure to meet you and be in your presence and to
Well,
actually read your work.
well, thank you, and likewise, I'm humbled by meeting young people like yourself and Asar, and just humble, Sanjetti, just humbled by meeting you all because I know how hard it is in this period to keep a clear mind with all this mess around us. I was fortunate because I ran into some scientific minds quite early. I started off in physics and saw how I had to get this security clearance to work for the white man. So knew I couldn't stay in that. I was out of there in about a year and a half. So I had to leave that. So I moved to statistics, research methods, demography. And so I followed through with that. But having said that, I have not met young people of you all's quality in my past, even students who stuck to things. I've been around smart students, but I have not been around smart students who cared about our people in the way that they should, because I knew as soon as they got those degrees, they would be out trying to get paid, and they would not even be thinking about the things that we had discussed in detail. But I see you all are not only thinking about the things, Naya, but you all are doing the things, Ankh. I mean, this is what I'm proud of. And so you have to keep doing that. You're going to run into difficulties as we did, but we have to keep working. You notice you never see our name out the first 20 to 25 years. Did not go out there. We kept working in the community. What you see from our books is the work that we did. We actually tested it. I know ASAR does an excellent job of explaining science. Science is tied directly to a hypothesis being tested to establish a theory. And so you have to see whether it works. And so that's what I had to do. That's what we had to do. We had to see whether certain things worked before we begin to put it on paper. So you won't see anything that we wrote for the first 15, 20 years, except the technical stuff that we wrote, in these institutions. And that was scanty. We certainly make certain that we only stuck to the letter of the law in that. So I'm closing in saying that I really appreciate you all, and that's why I'm able to spend the time that I spend with you all. I really don't do it with other people.
I do want to say this. It's mentioned earlier, but just to be clear, the link for the website for University of Kemet Press is in the description to this video. So if anyone was asking about where could they get the materials and get the books, the link is at the bottom of this video inside the description. And I'm actually showing the website live right now on the screen, where you can get all the books. As the brother Yahweh said, all of the books are below $50, which is amazing for books that you're talking about that's well over 1,000 pages. I mean, I call them bricks. When the Kai came to Atlanta and set up on a table, it looked like he had stacks of bricks on the table with timeline and box squared and so on. But that's the website. So you all can get the link at the bottom of the video.
Thank you, Ujawa. Anybody else? Asar or Sanjetti, you guys want to add to the conversation?
Yeah. I could, want to continue to say, that University of Kemet Press and, Yara Taka Kilimanjaro has been foundational in my approach to how information is relayed. And I love the model on saying that, you need to start with character, and this book is really fundamental in, how I relay information to people. I'm very, very careful of my words, and more particularly in the book, the 21 Daily Routines, from 267 to 269. Of course, I'm not going to read through it, but it does talk about, being direct and honorable and open-mindedness, having open-mindedness. So when I'm having conversations with people, especially in with controversial topics, that will challenge their perception of reality, us as a presenter or a teacher, we have a responsibility on the words that are coming out of our mouths, and, you know, being understanding of the other person. And, it's not just about, oh, I just want to give them the information, no matter how they feel about it. Okay. Because you have to take into consideration the experiences of the person you're talking to, you know. So by using this book, I've been able to, at least advance myself, and I've tested this out, on people. And, in teaching the metal lecture right now, I have students who have been in, the legacy per se, for a number of years, and some of them are priests, So what kind of a personality does it take, or approach does it take to approach people who are your elders, and then they come under your tutelage, you know, just, on that particular topic of meta nature, as opposed to saying to them, well, you don't know nothing, you should have this, you should have that. That's not the best approach. But by using character, good character, I've been able to accomplish a lot more with people by using the character to guide how the knowledge and information is being brought across. So, again, this work, very, very foundational, and the other works, always recommended them, especially with African time. African people reality starts with the beginning of the universe. It doesn't just start with Earth. But when we have those conversations, it needs to come from a place of being well informed. Okay. So that's what I appreciate about the book. Is one thing to say, oh, we come from the stars, we're spiritual people. Okay, but do you understand what spirit is? Do you understand what the universe is? So that's why I do appreciate the presentation by our brother, sorry, Motep, meaning the post that some of the brothers have been making, and especially the foundation of books from University of Kemet Press. So. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, indeed.
Play it, brother.
All righty. I want to kind of jump a little bit back to what Ka has been, Dr. Kilimanjaro has been speaking on. And I just wanted to highlight two books real quick. Many of y'all have seen me or heard me advertise this book. It's called Tribes by Joel Kotkin.
Got it.
And it is subtitled How Race, Religion, and Identity Determine Success in the New Global Economy. And so he identifies, quote unquote, 5 tribes who he believes, based on the evidence of his research, would ultimately, dominate in the 20th, 21st century. And so his 5 tribes, quote unquote, are the British, the Japanese, Chinese, the Indians, and the Jews. And so he doesn't, of course, name any African people in this. But as a basis for his, and I got wind of this book by reading Blueprint for Black Power. So this was one of his sources. So I went in, I read people's sources and I gain their source material so I can get a greater context of what inspired them to say what they say. So on pages 4 and 5, he talks about the 3 criterion in which all of these 5 tribes had in common that were the fundamental characteristics for their success. And he says, number 1, a strong ethnic identity and sense of mutual dependence that helps the group adjust to changes in the global economic and political order without losing its essential unity. Number 2, or the second characteristic, a global network based on mutual trust that allows the tribe to function collectively beyond the confines of national or regional borders. But it's a third characteristic. The other 2, of course, are very important, and I wouldn't put them in a hierarchy, one above the other. However, in relation to the conversation and the information that Dr. Kilimanjaro brought to the conversation, I think this is very relevant to this discussion. And the third characteristic being a passion for technical and other knowledge from all possible sources, combined with an essential open-mindedness that fosters rapid cultural and scientific development, critical for success in the late 20th century world economy. This was written in the 90s, so the 20th century. And so it was this passion for technical and other knowledge from all possible sources. This is very key because you find a lot of people in our community talking about that white man science, or that didn't originate in Africa, so we're not dealing with it. But everyone is succeeding because of their open-mindedness to information that works no matter where it comes from. And so this leads me to the second book, which is Great African Thinkers, Cheikh Anta Diop, edited by Ivan Van Sertima. Many of y'all may have seen this, Journal of African Studies. There was an interview done by, what's his name? Hold on real quick, let me just flip a few pages. And so Shauna Moore, and it doesn't give the specific. Yes, it does. It was in 1976. This interview was originally appeared in Black Books Bulletin number 4, pages 30 through 37 of that text, copyright 1976. So on pages 276 and 277 of Great African Thinkers, Afroscope asked him a question. And the question was, is that to say, of course, there was some more conversation going on before that, so it kind of feeds off of that. But just to give you the question that was asked, is that to say the future political, judicial, and economic institutions of Black countries will emerge from a selective fusion of elements coming from 2 structures, which, when they met, were antithetical? Cheikh Anta Diop replies, no doubt. I don't believe we can extirpate and reject everything which came from Europe, nor do I believe that we can reestablish everything from our pre-colonial structure. Neither probability would be realistic. However, if we consider Africa as a living organism, then we must acknowledge that she is engaged in a 2-way process of digestion, elimination. Just as other organisms digest a substance and eliminate the toxic waste, societies function along similar lines. We shouldn't see this process as one in which African identity is being lost. Rather, we should understand it as a process in which African identity is being reinforced through an adaptive selection of foreign elements. Perhaps on the individual level, we are not so conscious of the process going on, but it's a reality. Africa has always reacted in this way without ceasing to be Africa. Already, the Africa of today is no longer the Africa which existed before her contact with Europe. Yet Africa remains essentially herself, since she is a living and distinct cultural organism which continues to develop according to her own laws. And so you can see this from this early stage, even from Diop, one of our great intellectuals and ancestors, that this idea that we should just go back and live and do things the same way we did it, 5,000 years ago, 600 years ago, was unrealistic, and ultimately that it would continue to keep us in a subservient position. And so he is one who advocated to being able to utilize knowledge from other spaces and adapt them to our situation in Africa, and the diaspora included. And so we see this thought coming from Kemet Press, linking all this together. We see this thought coming from Kemet Press that is along that same line. And now they're just showing us how to do it. So Diop, even with his text, Black Africa, an economic and cultural basis for a federated state, was bringing these plans into fruition. Blueprint for Black Power, Dr. Amos Wilson, put together a major work along these lines. But now you're getting stuff, more specifically on how to actually bring those things into being. And the logic for why we need to question and examine, everything, regarding our history, what our claims have been and our interactions with, especially our enemies. And so, and of course, what needs to be done, moving forward and things of that nature. So I see, just from my own studies, the very great value in what they're doing. And I put them in that line of individuals coming from John Henry Clark, coming from, the Asa Hilliards and the Shekanta Diop, Sophia Follow Obingas, and things of that nature in that particular line. And so it is a great honor to be living in this time where these types of questions and these types of research and things are coming to the forefront. And people aren't really understanding that we have a great opportunity, even though our history as of recent has been very tragic, it is also, an opportunity to bring about a new reality in this world. And I think that we have the means to do it. And so, again, I appreciate, the work and more so the internal logic, of the way in which y'all approach the problems that we're facing. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Asar. Thank you, Amara Squad. I think that, everyone really, really, I can tell everyone was listening. So I just wanted to really kind of talk about now the developmental stages for the African Renaissance, because we talked about putting things into motion. So, Dakar, I really noticed in your books, you follow this this paradigm. You follow a certain type of pattern. You want us to know about you want us to know about the resurrection, the redemption, the reconstruction periods of every civilization, reunite, rebirth, and then again Renaissance. Could you talk about that in terms of African people today and how China is really a model for that? Because when I first came into the community, Unc can tell you, only thing I talked about was money, and we need to we need to go through a rebirth because we're losing, we're behind. So it's just a breath of fresh air to hear you say that, because I don't think that we really see that we're 300 to 400 years behind everyone else. I think that we have this idea that we are just on track when we're really not. So could you talk about that pattern in China and why it's important for us to have this renaissance?
Yes, thank you. And again, I do appreciate your thought level, you all's thought level, because some of these are difficult ideas to get across. The first thing you have to do in any situation is get an appreciation for the cycle, meaning the birth, death, and rebirth process. All societies go through it. Keep in mind that Rome collapsed and Europe said it went into a dark age. And when it came out of it, it used Rome's law, Rome's military, whatever was extracted from Rome that could be built on, they used it. Kemet collapsed, but the information from Kemet did not go internally to Africa to build. The people who came in took it, and then they built their stuff and they translated it into their own language, so it became for them a clean theft. Okay, it's mine, and they built everything on it. So now you see people building pyramids with solar energy panels. And you think to yourself, boy, that was built in Kemet almost 5,000 years ago. And these white people, and I understand that Saudi Arabia is going to build one too. They're building our stuff. And I started thinking, okay, well, why aren't we building our stuff? Because we don't know our history, or not only don't know it, but we don't respect it. Having said that, China is a good model for what Africa could begin the process of doing, but it will be difficult. As you recall, China was split up into warring states. I wouldn't call them states, but just, empires, all of the 1800s and the early part of the 1900s. The whites were over there tearing up stuff, running people around, got them riding them on the back. They had signs that said, no dogs and Chinese allowed in China. They had I brought up the Boxer Rebellion, where a test of logic took place, where the best fighters in China came forth with their martial arts and all this other stuff to take on the Europeans, and the Europeans had guns, and the Europeans slaughtered them. And the lesson was learned. Mao Zedong was young at that time, young man, a librarian when he first got into that movement. I kind of chuckle about a person stacking books ends up being the person leading a country out of the mess that they were in. But they had to clear up some things that we haven't even cleared up yet. You have to clear up this major debate between science and spirit. It should not be even a debate. It should be, let science have its parallel track of growth, inspire it, push it, get everybody involved, and let this spirit part have its parallel. It's already had it, but have its parallel place of growth, and let that process unfold, and keep those in unity. They're going to stay in conflict, but keep them in unity. This is what China had to do. They had to establish the scientific pole, the materialist pole. They had to establish that. We've never established that since the fall of Kemet's old kingdom. The old kingdom started off with literature that shows it was materialist, leading. It was a summary. It was called dualism. It was a summary of spirit and science, or matter and spirit. But matter led, you see. It was in unity. But that flipped over by almost 1,000 years later in the literature. You begin to see idealism begin to lead. And then once that took hold, it followed it throughout that history until they lost everything. And Aunt brought this up about iron, which was a very important discussion. You raised the question to yourself, why would Kemet lose all of what it had to populations that were almost 1,000 years behind it for so long? How did that happen? You have to keep up with the scientists. You can't just keep up with the spirituality part. You have to keep up with what's happening in material reality. You have to keep that advanced. If you don't keep that advanced, populations will pick up on what works and they will use it against you. So I used the comment about studying what China has done in the engineering area, in the federational area, which was the first thing that opened the door for it. I don't know if Africa is going to have that with the class that's in power right now in each one of these countries, the ruling classes that are in power. I don't see them sharing. I think there are going to have to be some revolutions in different countries in regions that they can link up. So you'll have regional confederations, and then at some point you'll have regional federations that can be built upon. That's going to have to happen first. But once that happens, and they're strong enough, 4 or 5 countries that form a regional federation, confederation and federation, then you have an opportunity to be able to defend yourself when the Europeans come. When I say come, they're already there. But when they, show themselves to try to put these things down as they did in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Having said that, what we do need to do is really, once we get the political arrangements in place, figure out how to get investments in technology and infrastructure into the country, along with teaching, in these countries. When I say teaching, I mean transmitting the knowledge, science, and technology and engineering into Africa quickly, as China did. What China did that was smart was they partnered with the Soviet Union that needed a partner at the time in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and extracted their science, extracted their engineering. This is the foundation of Chinese revolution right now in those technological areas. Once they got those learning situations organized with the Soviet Union and got about 20 years of it, they were able then to replicate that in different places. The biggest move they made was joining with Nixon. Nixon thought they were getting something, and opening the doors once the foundations had been laid. Then they were able to begin the process of letting the United States come in on the coastlines, you see, and set up these little factories. And they would then exploit the labor of China, a massive labor force. And that in the process, the whites thought they were just getting profits and doing what they do to Africa all the time. But the Chinese were sending folk to school, getting their PhDs, and then sending them into those factories. Mm-hmm. And they would go in there and model that factory. They would model the shoe factory. They would model the printer factory. They would model the oven, the stove and the refrigerator factory the United States was setting up on the coastlines. They would model those things. They would then go back after 3-year training sessions. The whites thought they were just, basic workers that they were exploiting. They would then go and plan architecturally those same buildings, set up the models, get the pieces, begin to reverse engineer the parts, and then set up the similar factory. They were not of quality initially, but over time they began to build quality into the cars that they produced internally. And then they started selling those cars cheaper than the whites could sell them over there and the other products. And once you have that process unfolding, you drive them out of business. And this is what's happening aside from the major cars that, GM and Ford still over there. My point is they had a plan. They had a system. They worked that plan. They had political control. They organized the political control to set up a system of education. The system of education was scientific. They did not let anything in there. I'll give you a good example of this. I was serving on a PhD committee in the early 2000 period at University of Michigan. I was sitting there in the crowd, and so they were announcing the PhDs, and so I was helping a couple of people get there, so they invited me to come. So I'm sitting up in there, and I see the stage full of Asians. And they're just announcing these people's names. And then I go through the book and almost 3/4 of the PhDs in physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, computer science, 3/4 of them were Chinese. This was in the early 2000 period. And so I saw what that move was. They send their best students over here, get them into these PhD programs in the major universities, bring them back, and then they set up schools of training engineers, of training physicists, training chemists. This is how they have accelerated catching up with the Europeans, at least in the applied area of the sciences. They're not leading. The Europeans still lead the world in the theoretical areas. Mm-hmm. But in the applied areas of the sciences, mm-hmm. where you make stuff and technology out of the science based on the rules and laws of science, the Chinese are catching up. And they're applying their wares around the world. Africa is just a test place for them right now. They come in, they understand that infrastructures are missing. The whites won't help them. The whites won't help the Africans. They keep them down. So Chinese came in the vacuum, and they want to exchange minerals and aspects of land for technical and technological engineering infrastructure. And again, I told folk that we have got to start somewhere, but we must have a plan. We have to have a plan similar to theirs. So I'll sum up. They had to get their political house in order, and they did. They had to know that you can't have mysticism and just laying around praying and, somewhere crawling around and think you're going to defeat people. You can have that, but have the work first. Have the science first. Have that understanding of material reality first and apply that first. You can have all the other stuff. You can add that in, but don't have the other stuff first because you're going to lose. Once they won internally in their own country, mm-hmm. they began to set up the arrangements of how people could come in. Africa has not won in any of these countries. And so they even loosely have not confederated yet. And they need to move to that level and then regionally move to federational levels. But once they've won in those areas, they can then set up the arrangements for people to come in. But they have to have the plan model after a plan that has worked. And the most advanced plan that worked, it brought a country that was in Africa's shape, similar to Africa, up to number 2 or number 1 in the world, which is, you can argue they're 1 or 2 as far as the economic system. They've done that, and given the population, almost 2 billion people, that they're only a decade or 2 away from leading the world in everything tied to the engineering areas. As a matter of fact, they have the most engineers in the world right now in one place, in China. So I end that and say, I don't think Africans that I see on Facebook discussing this understand what colonization was or is. I don't think they understand what happened in our history. I don't think they really have an understanding what the Arabs did to destroy North Africa and East Africa. I don't think they understand what the whites did, not only tearing up and stealing the intellectual properties of Africans and building their civilizations out of it, destroying Kemet, pushing a Kemetic civilization that built 47-story buildings out of stone to a place where you couldn't even build a mud hut on the Nile Valley. This is what the whites did. This is what the Semitics did. Semitic populations did who came into Africa. And I don't think they understand what that means, because when they discuss what's happening now with China coming in, they don't have an appreciation for how smart the Africans are to bring a population in that has technical capacities, and we don't have it. Mm-hmm. I just showed on my Facebook page that almost half of the African countries don't have electricity for the populations. 500 million people have iffy to no electricity. And almost 600 million have just filthy water conditions. And almost 200 to 300 million, you have raw sewage flowing in the streets. Some of you have been to Ghana. You talk about it, but some of you don't appreciate what that means. To be in this period in history using a colonial structure that the whites put in place just for them, to be using the same thing they use almost 80 to 90 years ago to get rid of sewage just shows we have not moved forward in these key areas. And people talk about Nigeria, and just like you need to start asking questions about class situations there. 80% of the populations live in poverty. That's almost 200 million people in a country, and almost close to 150 to 160 are close to or live in poverty.
And
Yeah,
that's a good point, Dr. Kilimanjaro. What do you think about repatriation? Because we often hear a lot of times we like to romanticize Africa. Could you talk a little bit, just a short version, about repatriation? And do you think that African Americans can possibly explore that as a avenue of taking us through the Renaissance and helping us to
yeah,
kind of
not as
rebuild?
individuals. This
Okay.
is this is not as individuals. We have to be as groups. Our team, your team, other teams have to come together with different skills. We need architects, we need chemists, we need Metternich language people acts. We need persons who know physics, chemistry, etc. We need we need people in teams to come together and go to certain places in Africa. We can't go as individuals. That's just a joyride. And for anyone who's going, many of them are going just to retire. They've worked here, and many of them older. They come and send their retirement checks over there. That's not going to solve our problem unless they're going over there with technical skills and they're willing to take the last 10, 15 years of their lives to try to train a workforce in something they've learned over here. So the argument I'm making is we have to form our teams with the best skilled people. We have to come together and organize ourselves, plan as we have planned with the University of Kemet, and stick to those plans, and finish those plans in stages, and then and check off what we finished, and then hand it over to the next generation. I'm checking off what I'm finishing. My wife and others, we're checking off what we're finishing. We're seeing you all are doing great stuff, and I can see certain areas that you can check off, especially in the language areas. You all can check those off because you'll be leading a leading force in pushing forward Africa in those areas, along with computer science, etc. So I say all that to say that we shouldn't go as individuals. We have to team up over here, get a clear understanding of what a plan is, how we can plan ourselves in certain regions of Africa that are, showing progress, and begin the process of building teams that will allow us to settle in the countryside and construct things that will allow us to build and push forward Africa in the areas that is weakest. We can't go in the areas that the Europeans are strongest, which are in the metropolitan areas. They have control of those cities. The whites still control the resources that go through those cities, and so you're not going to win that. And you can't get involved in the politics of anything in that regard. You have to go to the areas that are least developed and have your infrastructural information and materials in place to be able to build roads and schools and around those schools. I would take this is my closing. I would take the model from Booker T. Washington. I would take his model, except for taking money from whites. I would take his money, his model, and begin to build the school first, and then build the city around it. Tuskegee. I think we can plant those, and I mean a revised model. I don't mean what he was doing, 100 some years ago. I mean an understanding that if you built universities and the schools that led to them, you could train the people in what you needed them to know in order to build a city. So I would begin to say, get your teams together and prepare to utilize models that have worked. And Tuskegee worked. It just had a problem with the money they got. They took it from the white people who were trying to keep us down.
We also got to keep in mind what Sheikh Anta Diop talked about in Civilization of Barbarism, and that is, I understand that we think that, of course, African people are our brothers, and that if we come over there, they would just embrace us. They will if we are in small numbers. But let's say we get a sizable number over there. We come over here with a whole bunch of skills and things of that nature. that surpasses the local folks, then this becomes a recipe for conflict. And what Diop shows is that this has happened all throughout the history, which is one of the reasons why I have proposed that African Americans, at least in the initial stages, need to have their own space, like their own city, state, whatever, in Africa, and build from the ground up, and then have some kind of political power to where we can hopefully help to convince more African countries to unify in the United States of Africa, and then after that point just merge in. But so there's a lot that has to be considered even with that, in terms of going into Africa and how the locals would feel. Because even though we consider ourselves Africans over here, that may not be the attitudes between the quote unquote uneducated populace, who are on the ground living. And so here you come with these computer skills and things of that nature. And so if we do that, it would have to be in a way that is integrated. If we're not talking about creating our own state, integrated, which teaches them, how to do it. So I posted a video on my Facebook page in one of the conversations we were having, to show the dichotomy of what is going on here. So like many of y'all may know Dr. Malodoma Somé, and he has traveled the world talking about the Daguerre people in Burkina Faso and their spiritual system. And so if you've ever read any of his books, a lot of his books talk about what their capabilities are in terms of the so-called spiritual domain. So, Malodoma claims to have traveled transdimensionally, and, he has people who could turn into animals to heal sickness and all other kind of stuff that seems comic book for us. But when I met him initially in Houston, besides, giving us the information about, the indigenous spiritual system of the Daguerre people, he was also there to raise money so they could purchase whales for where they live. And it made me wonder, how could you travel transdimensionally? You have to read the book to know exactly all these things. See a tree turn into a green woman, and raise someone from the dead, so to complete a funeral and all this other kind of stuff. But no one is an engineer enough that they can find and dig in their own well using local materials. This is problematic.
Yeah, you got to be the initiate, brother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But there was another brother from Burkina Faso who the community, invested in him, and he went to Europe to get a degree in architecture. He ultimately came back and built a school, but he got the community to help, and they built it only using local materials. And he set it up to where they learned the skill, and now they can earn money in this village. So this village has no electricity and all that other kind of stuff. But he brought his skills back, and now because it was a problem trying to educate the children in a manner that was needed, saying to propel them forward. And so I think his was a greater lesson. While I do admire the information given by Malodoma Somé concerning the indigenous spiritual tradition, according to him. But when you don't have engineers or people who can dig wells and know where to go for wells, to search for underground water and stuff like this is problematic. So, this is, studying this earlier would force me to really kind of analyze, well, what is spirituality really? And, so of course I always approach things first from a linguistic perspective. So we come to find out that, spirit is not what everybody thinks.
that it is a relationship with the materials around them, food, clothing, shelter, and I added protection and family. Um, and so if we understand spirituality as the quality of the relationship with the material uh, essence around you, you know, saying how you are able to utilize your ecology. Well, how spiritual are the Daguerre people if they don't, know how to get access to fresh water? These are the kinds of questions that I raise, and these types of conversations, help put to the front. And so, I'm hoping that these conversations don't fall on deaf ears. That people take what we say, not just at face value, but investigate. But really push. Like right now is Black Science Month. Me and a couple of colleagues. One is a statistician. She just got her PhD a couple of years ago. One's a mathematician. One's a journalist. And then of course I'm a computer scientist. So we selected October to be Black Science Month, and all we do is push science and STEM in general to Black people, trying to get them to aid in their to inspire them to at minimum be scientifically literate, but to encourage, if not themselves, their children to get involved in the sciences, because this is what we need more of. And just like you talked about those Chinese people, when I was in undergrad, when I got to my higher level courses, it was a few white people and a whole bunch of Chinese, Japanese, and Indians in my class. I was one of two Black people in any class. And it's a shame, that if we're out here arguing that we are the creators of science and technology. When it comes time for science and technology, we don't want to take the courses. We run for math and say that's the white man's math. That's the white man's science.
Jump in on you, sir.
Go ahead.
To your point, to your point, Sar, you start off with this the statement of integration, right? How do we integrate back into whatever nation we say we're going to go to? And so that's always a position of humility, right? You have to be humble to know that you have the skill set that'll move this society forward, but you just can't go over there doggedly and impose yourself. And so that humility, that morality, that character comes first and allows you to see what's needed and implement the proper, not technique, method to get what's needed without damaging the very personality, if you will, of the people themselves and of the culture that you're trying to reintegrate into and elevate them at the same time, right? And so that's why we really push this morality first, this ethics and this character first, based on our own people's standard. And then we don't see ourselves as saviors, right? We see ourselves as equals, sharing a needed knowledge. And so we don't go in simply just building, we go in teaching. And so we're teaching, we've now empowered people to do what they need to do for their societies. And we don't stand out as much as the arrogant outsider, right, coming in to rescue. We position ourselves more as the I don't want to sound novel, but the sister or brother who's come back home to share with us, like the brother was sent away to walk in the skill and come back. So that piece of integration is huge, and the society becomes more in tune with their needs through that injection of the most advanced technology. They can then shape their natural world better, because it's just simply ridiculous to what you said about I can travel dimensionally, but I can't find water. It's just ridiculous, and it's
and I think it's a great example too of of where we are now. And the purpose of this show, right, is to encourage science and encourage it in a confident way, not from a position of anything less than power. Like, we can be African and we can have technology. So is there anything in terms of Takar that you would like to leave the people with? Like, do you have any marching orders that you want the people to get from this show tonight?
Yes, I do. I obviously don't go anywhere without thinking about, you know, past, present, future. And I really want, just as we're working together, I want people to begin to think about how they can team up. You asked the question about heading to Africa. Before we head anywhere, we got to team up here. We have got to see what we do best, the quality of our work, really put some precision into what we do, and begin to get around people who are doing precise work that may be different than ours. Um, I think, I don't know if Asar brought this up or Arndt brought this up, but one of you all brought up diversity, about diversity, is how important it is. There's nothing wrong with being a scientist. There's nothing wrong with being an artist. You know, I went back and looked at Asar's video last night about folk were complaining that some of the pictures you were using were had white people in it, and you said something like, I think someone called in and said something like, we need to get black folk to draw our own pictures. We need artists. We need designers. The designer may not engineer the car, but the designer draws it. We need architects. The architect may not construct the building, but they draw it. They put forth the mathematical and also identify the parts that are necessary to be assembled. So I say all that to say we need people to begin the process of teaming up and organizing themselves in such a way that in time we can discuss identifying, because some of us are studying places. I'm keen to not move us to places where we're enslaved from. I'm careful about that because I know there's a moment where that's got to be worked out, and it's got to be worked out from their side first because they did it. They organized or misorganized themselves working along with the Europeans to carry that process out. And so that has to be cleaned up on especially the east and west coast of Africa. Once you get teams together, get organized, get a plan, I think Asar is right about this. You can't just think that you're going to go into Africa and start moving stuff forward, no matter how positive it is, because people will be envious of you, and the whites will stoke that, Arabs, etc. We should follow and see what the Chinese are doing in that regard, because they built the dam in Ethiopia. They built the train systems in Ethiopia and the train systems and the tunnels in Kenya. They built major infrastructural projects that have worked, and the vast majority of them in these countries, in return for low interest, from what I've seen a few documents, loans that are tied directly to minerals if they can't pay it off in cash. So a lot of these openings that are occurring where they're seeing positive progress of modernization open the way for us. If we continue our work here and get teams together like they got together, the Chinese are sending architectural teams there, engineering teams, infrastructural teams, and later on, from what I understand, teaching teams. We can get ourselves together here. And it doesn't have to be science and technology only. It could be art, any form of art. It could be educational, any form of technical education, any form of artistic education. It could be any of those things, but we have to team up in diversity. So I said three things. Number one, we have to perfect our skills and our crafts, as I see some of you all are doing. I really appreciate what I see. Number two, we have to begin the process of teaming up, being diverse, not just teaming up with people who do what we do, but teaming up with other people who have elements that we don't have, and begin the process of forming confederations. This is what we're moving toward with you all. And later on, federations, because Kemet has already done that. They did it over 5,000 years ago. It's amazing how people lose sight of the fact that the only federal nation in world ancient history was Kemet, the only federal nation. You can talk about empires, you can talk about all these other stuff you're talking about, but a federal nation organized with 42 nomes, 42 states, organized in such a way that it rivaled the United States of America in 1891 is just amazing. So I say all that to say, once we have gotten our teams together, then we can begin the process of identifying as a team places that we can plan ourselves and how we could plan ourselves and what will be the conditions of planning ourselves and then what will be the process that we planned out to hand to the next generation, because this is a generational process. Naya, it's generational. And so my moment, I may have 10 more quality years in this, I know that. You all may have 20, 30, 40, I don't know, but what baton will be you be handing off? You see, what is the baton you hand off? Asar, Waju, Ankh, Sanjeti, Naya, Yar. What is the baton you hand off, and what quality is it? Because as we said before, everything is born, dies, and is reborn. We're in our phasing out stage in certain areas, but what will it be reborn in? You see. And so that's what we're working on, what the rebirth will be right now. So yeah, those three things we should focus our attention to.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I know that we've been going for about almost 2 hours now, so I wanted to just, you know, allow for anyone on our squad, if Sinjetti, Mujabu, if you guys want to wrap up and kind of talk about, give the audience the marching orders. I think that Takar did a great job of summing up what we need to do from here. Do you guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll add this, and I'll say this as a charge to anyone who is looking to advance any facet of society or community. You have to start off with character first, okay? You start off with character within, i.e., Ma'atic principles, and then you have to do critical research. And that doesn't mean just let me read some articles and then think I can teach. That's not what research is, okay? Figure out what research is. Do the work. And then from there, then if you have the propensity to teach and move things forward, then you can do so, but only after you've done critical research, field work, discuss problems, issues, and propositions with people who agree with you, and especially people who may have a different position than you do. Okay, weigh out the facts, use what works. If something doesn't work, you have to discard it, irrespective of your emotional attachment to it. Okay, if you're truly about the business of moving any facet of society or community forward, and use good character in you doing so. Okay, do not be condescending to other people. Consider where people are, and lastly, it is your perception of the other people, and it's your perception of your relationship to other people that would dictate the quality of what you teach and what you bring forward.
I'll go next because what Sanjeti just spoke on, I echo completely. It's almost like Sanjeti was in my head just now.
Oh man, Sanjeti.
But I would add to what Brother Sanjeti said is, along with the character, the results of having good character and working on character, what it does, it allows us to be honest with our shortcomings and our strengths and our weaknesses. And once you're honest with your own strengths and weaknesses, you'll put them into play in the appropriate position, appropriate spot. We'll lean on others when we're weak, and then we'll allow others to lean on us where we're strong. Okay, so that's what good character will result in. And then also with the think critically, we have to scrutinize everything, because the process of acquiring knowledge, a lot of times we acquire knowledge organically, and it's so slowly that we may not take a critical look at some of the things that we believe in and what we do and practice. We may practice something just on the strength of us organically growing into it, but never really looked at it and analyzed it and examined it to see if it's really something that works. We just do stuff just to be doing it sometimes. So so we need more of that. We need to scrutinize, which actually is a word that means to rumble through the rubbish and find what works. Okay, so that needs to be done. And then lastly, what I would charge everyone with is to learn how to communicate better. Communication is the key. We're not telepathic people. Everybody walks around with their own set of dictionaries in their heads, and we have to learn how to convey your thoughts to the next man and next woman's thoughts and synchronize those things. So we have to learn aspects of communication, and this is something that we take for granted, but we have to learn how to synchronize meanings and understand that we need that synchronization before we can continue to have a fruitful conversations. Because a lot of times I've seen people, I recently posted this up. 99% of all disagreements is based on miscommunication. And so if we
Yeah.
work on that, I think we'll speed up this renaissance process that Naya mentioned, and that we all been mentioning tonight. So those are my suggestions, marching orders, and so on. So I'll end it there.
All right. Well, my marching orders are pretty simple. And this is aimed more so at, and I mean, this could be applied to more seasoned folks, but especially you who are coming into consciousness. I would take at minimum a year, stay out of social media for the most part, and just study. You need to purchase these books. The first one being The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. The next one is Blueprint for Black Power, Amos Wilson. Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. Black Africa, an economic and cultural basis for a federated state. And then, of course, the series by the Kemet Press. And the reason why you need to sit down and contemplate all of these things is because all of them have detailed plans. And so they will put it in a context where you understand where we've been and the underlying issues that we have. I am with the Kemet Press, of course, because they have the research teams. When you read Diop's work, he's always basically begging for us to create scientific research teams. So, of course, the Kemet Press tells you how to do that. So with your research teams and your teaching teams, y'all center around a problem that needs to be solved. And then, given the wisdom from all these texts that you've read, go out and solve that problem. And that's my marching orders.
Uncle
Hello?
Cat, you next. Thank you. Thank you guys. Uncle Cat, you next.
All right, I had that the mute button was on. I said, very, very interesting show. I appreciate the wisdom and knowledge shared by Dr. Dakar. I really appreciate that. Also appreciate the information by Brother Yasha. I really appreciate that. My thing is, let's just keep doing what we're doing. It's a good book for y'all to purchase right here. The Believing Brain. Hate to say it, y'all. They're psychologically analyzing us. They know how humans think, period, across the board. Thinking is part of the evolutionary process. That's why we teach scientific literacy, so you can read books like this, The Believing Brain. Figure out why you believe. Figure out, are your beliefs grounded in fact, reality, or are your beliefs steeped in tradition? Remember this, never let custom and tradition and history be a weight, because that weight will weigh you down and drown you. We've become weighted down by our history and our custom and our traditions. 2018, Stone Age religions, all parts of them, might not be ready for the age of space. So we got to move forward as African people. It's a shame that in this book right here, this book right here, tribes, right? They ain't building on us. So are they just saying, like that cartoon, The Jetsons, where's the black people at in the future? I know what happened to the black people in the future. They had become bogged down in custom and traditions, the same way they did with iron. It was the customs and traditions and the priesthoods that destroyed them. So that's not going to happen to this next generation as long as we got Kemetic Press. I'm a Raw Squad, Sister Naya, um, Brother Sanjetti, Brother Saw, Brother Nahisi. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to happen to us. Shout out to the Mossy Clan Warriors. Make sure y'all get on the after show when we can really get a little loose and loosen up my tie. Make sure I loosen up my tie a little bit, right? And go into the subject matter. So I just appreciate y'all two brothers coming on. Been a breath of fresh air to our community. These books will be here for generations. All the books, all the brothers and sisters on the squad that got books. These books will be here for eons, and I appreciate y'all motivating me to write a book. My second book should be coming out too. All right, so appreciate that. Sister Naya, can you close us out, Queen?
Yes. Yes,
Um,
I definitely we appreciate University of Kemet Press. We want to close out Brother Yahar with you, and then Brother Takar, and then I just encourage everyone to just follow up our next show, part 2. We're going to go in some more. So let's close out with our guest.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, I'm really humbled with the opportunity. It came from a phone call. Unc, this is what we need. How can we make it happen? And we made it happen in the span of what, 6 days. We made it happen, and so that Unc and I laugh now about how we met. You know, uh, we laugh now about how we met, and I wanted him to buy a book, and he wanted me to give him a book. So that's how we met. And so wiser heads had to come in and say, give the brother the book. He will do for us more than what this book, this $33. And so with that, I say I appreciate the platform that's been built by the Amara Squad to even allow this discussion to happen in public. Because it's one thing to have a series of text to move for people, but the platform is not prepared. It's that much longer for the people to get the information. And so I'm just very actually humbled and grateful for the work of the Amara Squad to even allow the University of Kemet to move the work forward, which will move our people forward, which will again cause the generations that are behind us to live their true purpose, as opposed to this contrived existence that we live now. And with that, I defer now to my older brother, Dekai. Is he still
Yeah,
awake?
I am old. Yeah, well, I want to say one thing. I got a chance to see Asar's, he sent a couple of chapters to review um, of his upcoming book. I want to promote that because I read it and I appreciated what I read. I made as many notes as I could in a very short time for him. And I look forward to that book coming out. Certainly send me the link so I can get my order in ahead of time. You all are doing quality work. Waju, when you went back and corrected the things that needed to be corrected in the book that you put out around Meta Nature, and then you produced 2 others, I think, that showed your character. You saw errors, you saw a situation that was not clear, and you went in there and corrected it, cleaned it up. And then you explained what you did. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that. I learned a lot from your doing that. I say all that to say that in reciprocity, we have to find ways to make certain that you all's books get out, because we don't want them to get buried in time. That's what happens sometimes. People don't know quality, and sometimes they don't get an understanding of the thing when it comes out, and it gets buried in time. So I did get a chance to read a little of Asar's work, and if I could see the rest of it, if it's on that level that he presented here, we got something there. And I said this before, we are just clearing the path for a generation that will have to win. You see, some of us, I'm not saying us, but some of our people don't recognize that we're moving into a moment where it's do or die. We have to win. We have to know what we're doing. We have to plan. We have to be correct on our plans. So we're in that moment now where the generation coming forth has to win. You know, we speak to that in Box Square, that this generation will have to win, and so they'll have to have the tools to win. And I think what you all are doing is foundational. So Sanjetti, keep doing your teaching, keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing forward the integrity question, which is most important with our people. And the problem with some of the stuff that we see around here is people just don't have integrity, and they will put anything out. Watch you keep teaching. I know you're not making great money out of it, but keep making sure that the Metronetry gets taught. At some point, we'll have resources to push those things forward. Keep pushing forward the teamwork that you're pushing forward, cutting through the nonsense that we have. Naya, keep doing the work that you do technically, making sure people are accurate, not backing down to folk. You know, I see you all the time not backing down, just clear in the areas that you're clear in, you stand firm with those. A-Star, keep publishing. You know, keep your ideas flowing. Keep going to the conferences presenting. You are a very great teacher, in my view. You make a great professor. That, well, I'm not trying to send you into the white man's school, though. But you'll make a great professor somewhere, or at least over a program. So I will say all that to say I do appreciate you all. I will continue to work. This has been very good for me. It'll give me some energy next week. I still work at 8 to 5, so I still only have 3 hours at night to work on this book. So we'll have it ready, and I might be sending out aspects of it to you in late November so you can give me your critique on it. But thank you again.
All right. Okay, look, appreciate y'all coming through, man. It's been a powerful show. Look, this after show is going to start up in 10 minutes. We can get it in, y'all. At the end of the day, man, y'all make sure y'all remember, a well-organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Woo-hoo-wee.